Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 2nd of May of 2025. Today we have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And summarizing everything, I can say that today we have lots of crazy updates. And first let's talk about the Dnipro direction, where the Russians resumed their attempts to establish complete control over every single island that located along the river of Dnipro. During the day we got several articles that were published both by the Russians and by the Ukrainians. The Russians are saying to create a bridgehead near the city of Kherson. The Russians are trying to land on the islands. These statements we can see in pro-Russian segment of the internet. Right before we start making this video, we got another article published by the Ukrainians. And in this article, we can see a picture, and the author of this article reported that in this picture, we can see three boats that belonged to the sabotage and reconnaissance group of the armed force of the Russian Federation that landed in this area and captured another island. So summarizing everything, according to information we have, currently the Russians are about to establish complete control over this territory and to get as close as possible to the settlement of Kherson, which is located on the Ukrainian side of the river of Dnipro. We are talking about this settlement. So currently there are very heavy clashes, and the question is what the Russians are planning to do next. Some sources once again reported that the Russians are planning to cross the river of Dnipro and to establish complete control over this territory, and then to continue advancing further in the direction of the city of Kherson. Very interesting piece of news, so let's wait and see what is going to be next. Another important article was published also today, several hours after the post with picture with Russian boats. Some sources reported that they have received information about Russian accumulation in the red area. We're talking about Kinburn Spit. So currently the Russians are concentrating their forces exactly in this direction. The Russian objective is a serious landing operation somewhere in the Odessa Oblast and Achakov district. This is in accord with numerous reports of renewed Russian attacks on Tyaginka, Bugas Island and Kherson. I'll remind you that several weeks ago, probably somewhere during April, we had reports that the Russians managed to establish complete control over the islands in front of the settlement of Tyaginka, and there were several articles and several videos from this bank of the river where, according to information we have, the Russians crossed the area and began advancing in the direction of the settlement of Tyaginka. So we see that the Russians, according to these two posts, these two, let's say, areas, are trying to take the settlement of Kherson in pincers. The Russians, according to updates we got today and during the previous days, are trying to land to the southwest of the city of Kherson, and the Russians are trying to improve their positions to the northeast of the city of Kherson as well. As for now, we don't have any geolocations, we don't have anything to confirm this, we just have lots of reports that were published by pro-Ukrainian sources, by pro-Russian resources, and by neutral resources. Very interesting situation, and let's see of course what is going to be next, but obviously if the Russians begin offensive or landing operation in the direction of the city of Odessa, this can lead to unpredictable consequences. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the South Donetsk direction, where the Russians continue their offensive operation. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions and to take under complete control the southeastern part of the city of Bogatyr, of the town of Bogatyr. The Ukrainians are trying to concentrate their forces and to stick as close as possible to the northwestern and the northeastern parts of the settlement. Most likely the Ukrainian soldiers on the ground are waiting for their final order to retreat. But as I understand, as for now, Syrsky haven't ordered this, and he ordered most likely to stand in the settlement and to hold their positions for as long as possible. But obviously it is very difficult to do because the Russians are bombing and attacking the settlement of Bogatyr with all calibers they have. In this video we can see lots of explosions, how the Russians were bombing the most northern part of the settlement, the area of the concentration of Ukrainian forces that are waiting to receive a final order for retreat. As we can see, the Ukrainians are trying to stick as close as possible to the settlement of Alexeyevka, because most likely the Ukrainians realized and they understand a long time ago that most likely they have no chances to evacuate themselves in the western direction through the fields, because they would be destroyed immediately by the Russian artillery and FPV drone attacks. So most likely the Ukrainians are planning to evacuate in the northern direction with the purpose to take under control and to take their positions on the territory of the settlement of Alexeyevka and to slow down the Russians at least on the territory of this village for another week or two. So as I understand, the battle for the settlement of Bogatyr is coming to an end, and maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but most likely before the 9th of May, the Russians will be able to establish complete control over this settlement, and they will announce this victory during the 9th of May. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk direction. We had lots of very important details, so let's start. First, let's talk about the settlements of Novosergeyevka and Novoalexeyevka. According to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. The Russians are attacking from the settlement of Uspenovka in the western direction, trying to take under control the eastern part of the settlement of Novosergeyevka. We're talking about this area, and the Russians during the previous days managed to improve their positions and to take under control the eastern part of Novoalexandriivka. This information was confirmed by several pro-Russian resources and by neutral mappers. As for now, we don't have any proofs for this, but obviously we believe that this is something what is happening right now on the ground, because the Russians are trying to get as close as possible and to answer the Dnipro region. And if information of Russian progress in the eastern part of Novosergeyevka is correct, then the distance between possible Russian positions and the border between the regions is less than already 3.5 kilometers, which is very small distance. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the situation in the city of Pokrovsk. I'll remind you that yesterday pro-Ukrainian sources began publishing several videos, and according to those videos, the Russians managed to enter the southern part of the city of Pokrovsk and to establish complete control over this territory. In this video, we can see how the Ukrainians trying to force the Ukrainians to fall back, destroy the entire building. And as of the end of the 2nd of May 2025, we still haven't received anything that can confirm Russian presence in this part of the city. We had lots of updates from different mappers, reliable mappers, not reliable mappers, about the situation, and most of them reported that yes, indeed, the Russians managed to break through the Ukrainian defense and to enter the southern part of the city. As of the pro-Ukrainian sources and deep state, they still haven't confirmed this information, so obviously we need to wait. Anyway, despite the fact that we don't have anything that can confirm, we don't have even a single video where we can see Russian soldiers moving through the buildings, we understand that most likely by the end of the 2nd of May of 2025, the armed forces of Ukraine lost their strong control over the southern part of the city of Pokrovsk. Yes, they had strong control probably a month or 2 weeks ago, but now this is contested area, or the area which is covered with the fog of war. We believe that there is not just one sabotage and reconnaissance group of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. We believe that there is a critical mass of sabotage and reconnaissance forces in this area, which are trying to improve their positions and to prepare this foothold before the beginning of Russian major offensive operation from the settlement of Shevchenko, using regular army tanks, infantry, vehicles, and so on. So we expect that the next days the clashes are going to be intensified from the Russian side, and we expect that the Russians will try to take under control the southern part of the city of Pokrovsk before the day of victory. Now let's move further. Let's talk about big disaster that is currently taking place in the area between the city of Pokrovsk agglomeration, and the city of Konstantinovka. As you can see, we have lots of icons from this area, and today we continue. We have already discussed situation in this direction, and during the day we got additional updates that tell us that the situation is a complete disaster for the Ukrainians, that most likely they will not be able to stabilize the situation, and most likely the front line of the armed forces of Ukraine, the Ukraine defense in this direction, collapsed completely, and currently it's very even difficult to project where exactly the Ukrainians are going to stop the Russians. Now let's start from the beginning, and let's start discussing everything in details. First of all, let's discuss the settlement of Malinovka. Yesterday in the evening we got reports that the Russians managed to enter the eastern part of the settlement, but as for the end of the 2nd of May, we still haven't received anything that can confirm Russian progress on the ground. There is just 3 pictures from some Western center who reported that the Russians managed to enter, and while the Russians were moving on the eastern outskirts of Malinovka, several vehicles were destroyed as a result of Ukraine attack. But probably more than 70 or 80% of let's say other vehicles of Russian vehicles continue to drive further into the town. So let's say Western resources reported that maybe by the end of the 2nd of May, the Russians managed to establish complete control over this territory, but as for now, without any geolocations and any proofs. Anyway, we are waiting for additional updates from this area, because if this information is correct, most likely the Russians will provide us pictures, videos very soon. As for the, let's say, area along the N32 road, the situation is very critical for the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians were completely defeated, and the Ukrainians lost control over the most important stronghold in this area. So we discussed the situation in this area for many times. This is perfect position for defense if you know how to be in defense. There are 4 water reservoirs. The water reservoir in the vicinity of Novopoltavka, another reservoir to the north, another reservoir in the vicinity of Novoalenivka, and another reservoir between the settlement of Novoalenivka and the settlement of Tarasovka. So once again, this is a perfect position for defense. And the Ukrainians, all in all, had, or maybe still have, a very powerful stronghold right in the center, right in the central part of between all these reservoirs. And the Ukrainians were planning to hold their positions in this area for as long as possible, because Ukrainians understand that if the Russians begin offensive operation from the south, no matter how many units, vehicles they're going to use for this, the Russians would suffer critical losses, and they will not be able to, let's say, walk through this stronghold along N32 road. So that is why the Ukrainians were pretty calm. They were they thought they were in safe position, and they didn't expect any problem or any surprise from the Russian side. But the Russians prepared a surprise for the Ukrainians, and that surprise was a complete disaster for the Ukrainians. The Russians yesterday in the evening began offensive operation from the settlement of Tarasovka along the eastern bank of these reservoirs in the direction of Novoalenivka. I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know what's exactly happened there, but for some reason the Ukrainians in the settlement of Novoalenivka refused to defend their positions. This is the video. Of course, before a Russian offensive, the Russians were bombing and attacking this territory. The Russians established complete FPV drone control. The Russians destroyed artillery forces. The Russians destroyed mortar positions. The Russians destroyed almost every single FPV drone position. I mean, I'm talking about operators of FPV drones. And after the Russians cleared this territory as much as possible, the Russians began offensive operation with the use of a significant number of soldiers and motorcycles. So the Russians managed to break through the fence and answer the settlement without any resistance from the Ukrainian side. And when the Ukrainians realized that the situation had already happened, the only thing they managed to do is to begin running from their positions. And the next part of the video, we can see how lots of Ukrainians without arms, without anything, were running from the settlement. And obviously this running from the settlement allowed the Russians to answer this territory without any resistance from the Ukrainian side. The Russians captured the most important positions, and from this area, of course, the Russians had best opportunities and best chances to attack this stronghold in the middle of this area from behind. And obviously the Ukrainians didn't expect that the Russians can do this. And during the day we got this video where we see the process, how the Ukrainians were running from their positions and how they were attacked from behind. This is the video. We will not watch the entire video because the Ukrainians suffered huge losses while they were trying to retreat from the settlement of Novoalenivka in the direction of this stronghold. And I would like to point your attention to this picture. This is Ukrainian stronghold. I would like to point your attention that this stronghold is almost undamaged. Ukrainians spent millions of dollars to create this stronghold, which most likely the Russians managed to take under control without almost any resistance from the Ukrainian side. And now most likely Ukrainians have no chances to restore control over this territory. When the Ukrainians realized that disaster happened, they began running away from this $1 million stronghold in the direction of other positions. But these Ukrainians were ambushed by the Russians, who was waiting for them from the south. So the Ukrainians are running, as you can see, or trying to run as fast as possible, as fast as they can, but Russian machine gunner began attacking them from behind. So when we turn back to this map, the Ukrainians basically left their stronghold somewhere here, and then along this road they were trying to run away in the direction of this central stronghold. But at some point, somewhere in the middle of the video, several Russian soldiers also entered to the open space. They took machine gun and they began attacking the retreating Ukrainians from their backs. And Ukrainians lost their soldiers exactly in this point. Those who managed to survive entered these small forests, these small brushes, and then the Russians began bombing and attacking them with artillery artillery. So once again, the Ukrainians in the Konstantinovka direction lost probably the most important strategic position without any resistance, without anything that they could show to the Russians. Obviously, this is greatest defeat in this direction, and now it's very difficult to project where the Ukrainians are planning to stop the Russians. But when talking about pro-Ukrainian sources, they're trying to deny these facts. The Ukrainians are saying that, the more precisely, Deep State reported that indeed they confirmed that indeed the Russians answered this village of Novoalenivka, but the Ukrainians are saying that they managed to repel those attacks and to force the Russians to fall back. So Ukrainians reported that they controlled the village of Novoalenivka, but we just watched the video that tells a completely different situation. Also, the Ukrainians reported that the Russians attacked the settlement of Novopoltavka, and as for this offensive operation, the Ukrainians are saying that they have no connections with Ukrainian soldiers in the settlement of Novopoltavka, and currently they don't know what is the exact status of this village. So most likely that by the end of the 2nd of May, the Russians will establish complete control over this settlement as well, and this is going to be multiple disaster for the Ukrainians on the Konstantinovka and the eastern flank of the city of Pokrovsk or Pokrovsk agglomeration. Obviously, this is a very huge victory for the Russians that will allow them to move further in the northern direction, in the direction of Konstantinovka, with the purpose to outflank the Pokrovsk agglomeration. And once again, it's very difficult to understand right now where exactly the Ukrainians are planning to stop the Russians. Obviously, the nearest point, the nearest positions where the Ukrainians are able to do this is this yellow line between the settlements of Stepanovka, Dovga, Balka, Sofievka, Vladimirovka, Mayak, Novotoretsky, and Novoekonomichna. So just along this yellow line, the Ukrainians would be able to slow down the Russians. Everything inside of this pocket most likely would be taken by the Russians if information about Russian breakthrough in this area is confirmed. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in this pocket. According to information we have today, the Russian sources, the Russian forces began advancing from the settlement of Tarasovka in the direction of Alexandropol. Several pro-Russian resources reported that the Russians have already answered the settlement, and clashes are taking place already in the central part of the village. If this information is correct, most likely the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back in the direction of the settlement of Zarya. But the thing is that it's not very not very safe to stay in the village of Zarya, because according to pro-Ukrainian sources, the Russians managed to break through Ukraine defense belt and to get as close as possible to the settlement of Romanovka and Zarya from the southeast. So this is the situation by the end of the 1st of May of 2025, and this is the situation by the end of the 2nd of May. According to this configuration of map, the distance between Russian positions and the village of Romanovka is already less than 2 kilometers. So we see that something big is happening right now, something huge is brewing. As for the Konstantinovka direction, today we continue receiving lots of videos from the territory of the mine. During the previous video, we discussed Ukraine's attempt to counterattack. At least the author of this video reported that Ukrainians tried to counterattack, but their vehicle first was damaged, and then Ukraine's vehicle was destroyed as a result of FPV drone attack. And according to pro-Russian, author, the Russians saved control over this stronghold, and that Ukrainians were forced to fall back. So this information we got from pro-Russian source. Later we got another video. This is the video I'm talking about, and in this video we can see how Russians were attacking some facilities and constructions on the territory of mine using missiles. So we believe that Ukrainians most likely, as a result of counterattack, managed to land infantry and to take under control this construction. So we believe that there are still very heavy clashes, and there is still the presence of the armored force of Ukraine on the territory of this facility. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the situation in the city of Chasiv Yar and in the Chasiv Yar direction. As for the previous 24 hours, the Russians were concentrated in taking under control positions along Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal. The clashes were taking place for this forest, for the area of responsibilities of the 56th Motorized Brigade of the Armored Forces of Ukraine. Several sources confirmed Russians secured the forest to the west of Grigorovka, and we have geolocation that can confirm this. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the situation in the Liman direction. According to information we have, the Russians improved their position. So we have discussed the situation in the previous video, and as of the end of the 2nd of May, we haven't received any other proof that can confirm Russian control over this territory. So we will just skip it. Very interesting updates are coming from the northern directions, from the city of Vovchansk. Today, probably for the first time for a very long period of months, we have adjusted the map in the Russian favor. This video was published by the 57th Brigade of the Armored Forces of Ukraine, and in this video we can see how Ukrainians were attacking with drones positions of the Armored Forces of the Russian Federation below the bridge along the river of Vovcha that connects the northern and the southern part of the city. So Ukrainians were attacking Russians in this area, Ukrainians of 57th Brigade. So this video, based on this video, we came to conclusion that the Russians managed to establish complete control almost over the entire territory of the northern part of the city, and we have adjusted the map. This is the situation by the end of the 1st of May of 2025, and this is the situation by the end of the 2nd of May. So the Russians are about to finish the battle for the northern part of the city of Vovchansk, and then they will continue moving further in the southern direction. Now let's talk about the Sumy direction. We have lots of important updates. First of all, according to information we have, the Russians are about to finish the battle for the settlement of Buildup. During the previous 24 hours, several resources, independent and very reliable resources, reported that the Russians are about to finish the battle. As for now, Ukrainians of 67th Brigade control just the southeastern part of the settlement. The rest is under complete Russian control. Several pro-Russian resources reported that the entire village is already under complete Russian control. Today we have some changes on the ground along the border between Russia and Ukraine, and today pro-Russian resources published this video where we can see how Russian soldiers establish flag along the border between Ukraine and the Russian Federation. As for this video, we don't see Russian soldiers, but we believe that it's still unsafe to walk along the border because there are Ukrainian positions further in the western direction. But anyway, based on this video, we have adjusted the map, we have colored the entire forest and the territories around the settlements of Oleshnya and Garnal. So we see that there are just several islands of resistance on the Russian side of the border. We are talking about the territory in the vicinity of the settlement of Garnal. The Russians are focused to clear this area as soon as possible, and obviously before the 9th of May. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.